And that's because you lost control, and sometimes you mad at yourself. I've been mad at myself because how could I fallen so deep? I'm mad at myself as how could I've done this? How could I've done that? How could I've let myself be taking that in? So you become mad at them, you become mad at God, you or whatever mad, whatever spiritual being you mean, mad at God, mad at yourself, and sometimes you're bargaining with yourself. So you'll say stuff like, if I've done this different, or if I've been there, if I was there right there, if I had called so and so, if I had, just text so and so, if I didn't do this, you start bargaining with yourself, thinking that if you I did something totally different, it would have changed it would have changed the outcome. And sometimes you're just heavy. Some days you can't even wake up. You don't even want to wake up. Sometimes you just want to dream. Sometimes you don't even want to live again. Sometimes you don't even want to move again. Sometimes you don't even want to progress yourself to go, because you're like, how did I lose this opportunity? How did I lose this person? How could this happen to me? This came out of thin air. This came out of left field. Da, 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 da. You feel healthy. And well, what's up, family? It is your brother, your preacher, your teacher, and I'm hopefully your favorite podcast host, Tracking President, with another episode here at Legacy Builders Podcast. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I am loving the feedback here. Y'all, we are moving. 2026 already looks different here at Legacy Builders Podcast, but we couldn't do nearly half of the stuff we're planning and wanting to do if it wasn't for your support, your support. So thank you, family, for thank you, family, for supporting us here at Legacy Builders Podcast. But if you haven't yet, subscribe at Jackie President TV. Also, like us on Spotify, share us on Spotify. We need to get our Spotify audience up. I was looking at the data and I'm just like, oh, gotta get it up. Apple Podcasts, wherever you may be, whatever you may listen in, it is Legacy Builders Podcast, one of your favorite podcasts. And today, I'm gonna start off with this. Everybody tells us to be strong, but nobody tells us how to grieve. We clap for healing, but we judge the process. Some of us aren't broken, we're just grieving. And today we're talking about something that is so real. And I visited this episode. I visited this like 2 years ago, but I want to dive back into it. Grief, because grief isn't just for funeral. Grief shows up in the classroom. Grief shows up in relationship. Grief shows up when our dreams die. And there have been times in my life. I think 2025 was a season and a time of year-long grief. Not because somebody died per se, but I felt like in 2025 I lost myself. And I couldn't, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't grab myself out of it. There would be some times and some seasons where I would be able to, I was able to grab, but then I would fall back in. And so where, and sometimes, and it felt like things were ending, seasons were ending in 2005 when I wasn't ready for them to end, or if I wasn't ready for them to end, or I wasn't prepared to handle life after they end. And so, and sometimes people expect you to just move on. I mean, when you are deeply invested in something, when you're deeply wanting something real bad, I think it's that just move on is something so hard to hear. Because if you move on too quickly, did you really love it? And if you move, and if you stay there, are you opening up yourself? Are you saying you can't experience something like that again? And I'm not just talking about relationships. I'm just talking about opportunities. There were some opportunities that I grieved the whole year because I wanted it real bad. There was two jobs that I applied for last year that I wanted real bad because they were going to set up a different trajectory in my life. They were the doors that we all wanted to open. You know what I'm talking about? There were the doors that we always, we peaked ourselves. I peaked myself into the future. And so I want to talk about, I really want to break this thing down. What is grief? Grief is the emotional, mental, physical response to loss. It's what happens when something you cared about gets taken away, ends, or changed. So grief is the emotional, mental, as well as physical response to loss. And it happens when something you cared about gets either taken away, it ends, or it changes. And so grief becomes proof that you were invested. Look, we look at grief sometimes as a bad thing, but sometimes grief shows us sometimes what how much you really were invested, how much you were invested financially, how much you were invested physically, how much you were invested emotionally, spiritually. It shows us. It shows us and it shows you and it tells you how much you were invested. And so you don't grieve things you never loved. You don't it is very hard to grieve things over something you wasn't invested in or something you never loved. So you can tell, you can tell how much how people were how much they were invested, how they grieve. Now I'm not saying everybody has to be crying and wailing, but it shows. And so you don't grieve a job you hate. You grieve one that you poured yourself into. You don't grieve people you didn't care about. Your grief shows the connection that you're in. Your grief shows how much you cared. Your grief shows how much you invested. And I think some of us, we when we go through the grieving process and we realize how much we were invested in, some of us like to close right there. We like to close up because we like, whoa, we're weak. We feel weak. Some of us who've been the strong friend, some of us who's been the strong family member, some of us who've been the strong, strong, strong. Grief has a way of punching you down, and sometimes grief shows you how much how lack of power you really have. And so you will harden your heart because you didn't like how you felt in that moment. You didn't like how you felt, how little power you had in that moment. And so what should we study about grief? Grief, we need to study grief so we don't start thinking something is wrong with us. It is okay to take time to grieve. It is okay to take time to really dig in what happened, how you were invested, why you were invested. It's okay to dig in that time because we society will start telling us that something is wrong with us. Society, we'll hear something like, okay, it's time to wrap it up. Okay, it's time to get rid of it. Okay, it's time to do this. When no, no, no. Sometimes we need to study our grief, study why we're grieving, study how we're grieving, because you're telling yourself, and you don't care about the people, but you're telling yourself that nothing's wrong with you. Because you start thinking when you grieve too long, or if you grieve too short, is something wrong with me? It clearly something wrong with me. And so you have to realize that healing, I talk about this a lot, but healing is not a straight line. There's no one ticket to healing. We all heal differently, and the amount of time we heal and the amount of time we grieve is different. Some days you're okay, and some days a memory, a fragrance, a this or that will will trigger something, and you're not. But here's the thing, and something I liked And when I was studying, when I was making when I was creating this episode, here's the thing: you still can be productive and still grieving. You can be smiling and still hurting. And so, when talking about the stages of grief, sometimes you're in denial. You'll start saying stuff like this: "I'm good. I'm fine." Sometimes you're angry. Sometimes you're mad at them. God, I've been there. God, where I am directly mad at them. I'm mad because they left me. I'm mad because they they left me at a certain time in my life where whatever I'm mad at them. Sometimes you're mad at God. Have you ever been there where for all my faith believers, you mad at God like, God, come on. You ever had that? You be like, God, come on. Ain't no way. Ain't no way, God, you just let me do that. Come on, God. You ever had those moments where you're like, man, like for real? And that's because you lost control. And sometimes you mad at yourself. I've been mad at myself because how could I fallen so deep? I'm mad at myself as how could I've done this? How could I've done that? How could I've let myself be taking that in? So you become mad at them, you become mad at God, you or whatever mad, whatever spiritual being you mean, mad at God, mad at yourself. And sometimes you're bargaining with yourself. So you'll say stuff like, if I've done this different, or if I've been there, if I was there right there, if I had called so and so, if I had, just text so and so, if I didn't do this, you start bargaining with yourself, thinking that if you had did something totally different, it would have changed it would have changed the outcome. And sometimes you're just heavy. Some days you can't even wake up. You don't even want to wake up. Sometimes you just want to dream. Sometimes you don't even want to live again. Sometimes you don't even want to move again. Sometimes you don't even want to progress yourself to go because you're like, how did I lose this opportunity? How did I lose this person? How could this happen to me? This came out of thin air. This came out of left field. Da, 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 da. You feel healthy, and then and I think this part is when I think true healing start to like manifest. And I don't think it's the fully healing. You finally accept it. And so there have been moments in my life. I talked about it. I had this two job opportunities, y'all. Two job opportunities. One at a extraordinary school. I mean, gifted school, God school, and then one at a state of the art ministry, and I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, I was already playing. You can talk my friends already playing, and then I just didn't get either one, and I was just like, God, come on, like God, you hear me praying. I want to get out of this situation, da da da. And I started grieving because I started to think, dang, I started to think, dang, do I not have what it takes? Then I started to compare myself because I see other people my age who have similar skill sets and they're getting the opportunity. They're getting to do this. I'm just like, come on. And so I went to the season where I started to pretend that it was okay. I started to say, what's the point? I kid you not, I started to say, what's the point with this podcast? I started to say, what's the point with me trying to lose weight? What's the point with me trying to do this? What's the point of me trying to do positive? I was at that point in life. I was like, what's the point of all this, man? I was like, what's the point? It's not getting me nowhere. It's not getting me. I was at that point. And then and it wasn't until, I kid you not, into December. And I'm not saying this, but I'm just talking about me. I'm sharing my personal. It was to December. I said, oh, I wasted a lot of, and I'm not saying I did that season wasn't necessary, but I wasted a lot of time being mad at something I could control, being mad at myself over something I could not control, and thinking just because I can control one area of my life, that means to think that the stuff I was doing was not worthy, didn't require my time, didn't require my attention. I started to think that way. I started to think that way because I was so mad, and I was in that mad state. I was mad at God. I was mad at other people. I was mad at the people that were succeeding. I was mad at this. I was mad at that. And I started to shell in myself. I started to shut down because I said, what's the point? And have you ever been there where you like, what's the point, man? Please. But that is what I'm creating this podcast because you're not alone. If you're there right now listening to me, if you're at that point in life right now, you're not alone. I've been there. Many of people who we look at success, they've been there. But the magic of it all is you have to know that that is part of your grief process. That is a part of the systems and the places that you have to deal with, the process you have to deal with. And another time, I'm looking, I'm looking and I'm like, God, my praxis score, anybody, praxis. I was so mad. I was grieving. I kept failing that test. I kept failing that praxis. So, what, man, what's the point? Man? What's the point? But then I had to realize that I couldn't give up. And that's one time I didn't give up, and glad I didn't because now I'm teaching. So you listen to me at this point. You're saying, okay, Raheem, well, is grief good or bad? You're asking me this question: is grief good or bad? And I said, grief hurt. Grief is uncomfortable. Grief will make you sit with emotions you'll rather avoid, but then shift. But grief is also honest. Grief shows you what matters to you. Grief reveals where your heart really was and where your heart is going and where you need to shift to. Grief can mature you if you let it teach you. So you ask that question after I've said that. Grief hurts. Yes, it does. Grief is uncomfortable. Yes, it is. Grief will make you sit in emotions you rather avoid because that's what we love to do. We love to avoid things. No, yeah, ever hurt? No, I ain't going back there. I ain't doing that again. Nope. Nope. Nah. Been there, done that. You ever said that line to yourself? Been there. I ain't go. Nope. I ain't going back. Nope. Please. But then it shifts, and then grief makes you be honest with yourself. Grief shows you what mattered to you. And then grief reveals where your heart is really at. Mm. Oh, did I say that? And then grief can mature you if you let it teach you. I've been matured because I what I went through last year. Now I have to manage where I have to now put my maturity into action. I have to put now my maturity into places and spaces. So how look. Yeah, y'all know my story. You know my story. My biological father wasn't as active in my life, and if he's watching, he can be honest. I'm not throwing him under the bus. I love my father deeply. I do, no matter what. But there was a part of me that was grieving him. It was a part of me that was grieving, just everybody talked about their dad, and I'm glad I had stepfather who I call my father too. Yes, that raised me, and he, took me under his wing that he didn't even have to. And I thank God for him every day because he is the reason that I'm here. But just growing up as a little boy, you started to think that something was wrong with you. Or just, you yearn for something that you wanted. But then can I tell you this? That has kind of made me the man I am today. And here it is. It has allowed me to connect with my students. It has allowed me to collect with other people. It has allowed me to mature to a place and a space where I needed to be. So I don't hinder that season. I don't grieve that season anymore. I don't let that be a hindrance. That was good grief. That was that was good grief that I needed to go through so I can know what I needed to do. And so how can loss change how you move now? You have to realize how your loss can change you and push you to exactly where you need to be. Stop using loss as a way of saying that you'll never achieve something, and start using loss as a launching point. Start using loss as a way as a way to launch you into the season that you need to be. That's good grief. That's good grief. That's good grief. So you have to be healthy ways. Healthy ways to process your grief is here. Here, stop pretending you're okay just to make other people comfortable. Stop pretending that you are okay just to make other people comfortable. Talk about it, journal about it, pray through it, cry if you need to, get help if you need to. Take time. Healing, beloved, healing, y'all, isn't forgetting about what happened. No, no. Healing is learning how to live again without bleeding over everybody. Look, y'all, look, I'm a preacher, y'all know that. Going to therapy. And I'm going to therapy. And therapy has taught me to talk about it from a neutral person. My therapist don't know me from a can of paint unless into anything I told her. Because I've been in a season before. I've been in a season where, I tried, and I'll be very honest with you, I tried to, take my life because I didn't see the ability. I thought that there was no reason to live. I thought there was no reason to live. And going through that journey, that dark period in time, if it wasn't for God, it wasn't for family members praying for me, it wasn't for my therapist pulling me out of that faulty thinking, pulling me out of that trap of thinking of, da da da. Da. And so I want you to find a way to not offset your grief, but not put the weight of the world on your shoulders. How hard life that is to always think that the weight of your world has always have to be on your shoulder. I don't want to live in that type of life. I tried to live in that type of life. I tried to live in that type of life where I thought I was supposed to save everybody. I thought I could handle everybody's problems. And you know what? I looked at myself. I was busted, disgusted, and not where I needed to be. I was so unhealthy mentally, physically, spiritually, because I was trying to be Superman. And that's not my job. And that is not your job to be Superman, Superwoman. Sometimes it's okay to take some stuff off your plate. Sometimes it's okay to tell people no. Sometimes it's okay to say that you are not okay and you got to deal with yourself. It's okay. They'll be okay. They'll learn to live, function, because guess what? If you were out of here, they would have to learn how to live without you anyway. And I'm talking about grief is not just about death. Stop telling people that grief is just about people who died. That is so much more to that. All right, you could be grieve friendships, you could grieve jobs, business that fails, grieve a season that ended before you're ready, grieve people that are still alive. and so and I've talked about some examples. I've grieved some people, some relationships that failed, um, some family dynamics that have shifted. I've grieved that. Some church dynamics that have shifted. I've grieved that. But sometimes the hardest grief Not was dead, but what never became. Some people are grieving what they never became. Some people are grieving what they never thought would happen. Some people are grieving relationships with people and friendship they thought that they were going to the ground together. So here it is. You got to give people grace in this season. You got to give people grace because you don't know what they're dealing with. You got to give people grace, understanding, room to grieve. Give somebody room to grieve. Look, it's like coming into a new relationship. And and I give myself, I'm saying everybody I've dated, or yeah, everybody I've dated, you know, they have they always come with some type of grief. And I'm like, God, am I a fix up guy? Am I like, rebound guy? But and then here came the Superman complex. And I had to realize I give space, friendships, space, family members space. Listen, when my granddaddy died, my mom, and she's getting better. She watches this. She's getting better. But I had to give my mom space to grieve because my answer was, come on, mom. Come on. Come on. You're a woman of faith. Good. And I had to realize sometimes I would slap myself in the mouth and realize, no, give her some space. Because she's in a new world. She's in a new realm. She's in a new thing. She didn't think this was going to happen. So when somebody's grieving, they didn't think that was going to happen. Even if they know somebody was going to die, even if they know the relationship was faulty, even if they know the friendship was faulty, still when it ends, there's a moment and there's a season of grief. And you got to say, whoa, they're in a new world. They're in a new realm. They're in a new place. So, God, this episode, y'all, family, I thank God for wrapping it up because I could be here all day. I just want to don't waste your grief. Let it teach you. Let it mature you. Let it shape you because even grief can build a legacy. Even grief can build a legacy. So, family, I love y'all and I'm excited for where we're going. Make sure you tune in next Monday for another episode here at Legacy Builders Podcast. I promise y'all, I'm lining up some guests here at Legacy Builders Podcast, so y'all can't say y'all just hear my voice. I want to bring a different perspective as we're entering in this month of February. Great month. Great month. Love y'all, family. See y'all next Monday.